"Trust me, I'm a nurse," she said with a reassuring smile as a worried mother handed over her fragile newborn. Hours later, that baby was dead, and the nurse meant to care for him was the one who had quietly taken his life. This is the chilling story of Lucy Letby, a neonatal nurse who became one of Britain's most notorious child killers. This case sent shockwaves through the UK, breaking the nation's heart and shattering trust in the healthcare system. Lucy Letby's crimes were almost unimaginable. 7 newborn infants murdered, and several more fighting for life under her watch. How could a seemingly kind nurse commit such horrors in a hospital's neonatal unit, a place meant to be safe for the most vulnerable babies? The contrast between her public persona and her heinous actions has made this case one of the most disturbing in modern medical history. Lucy Letby seemed, in every way, an ordinary young woman with a caring heart. Raised in a loving family in Hereford as an only child, she had a normal upbringing. Friends remembered her as sweet and beige, so average that nothing in her life stood out as alarming. In college, she was studious and responsible, eventually pursuing her dream of nursing at the University of Chester. By 2011, she qualified as a registered nurse, eager to work with infants. Letby began working in the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital, where she soon became a well-liked and trusted member of the team. Colleagues described her as reliable, hard-working, and kind. She even became the face of a hospital fundraising campaign in 2013, cheerfully posing in her scrubs to help raise £3 million for new neonatal equipment. To doctors and fellow nurses, Nice Lucy was part of the family, a devoted caregiver who doted on the infants. Parents trusted her implicitly. Many recall how she would chat with them, offering comfort during anxious nights, and celebrate little improvements in their baby's conditions. One couple even received a kind sympathy card from Letby after the loss of their child, not knowing the horrifying truth behind their baby's death. It was this ability to present a caring face while concealing murderous intent that made her crimes all the more shocking. On the surface, Lucy Letby's life was filled with smiles and normalcy. She shared cocktails with friends on holidays, took selfies at horse races, and adored her pet cats. Her social media showed a happy young woman in her mid-20s, living freely outside of work. There were no warning signs, no dark history, no evident trauma that hinted at what was to come. As one police investigator later remarked, "There isn't anything outstanding or outrageous that we found about her. She was an average nurse, but clearly there was another side that nobody saw." The horror began to unfold in 2015 on the neonatal ward. It started quietly, a tragic but not unheard of event when a premature newborn suddenly collapsed and died. Letby was the nurse on duty. At first, colleagues sadly assumed it was a natural heartbreak of neonatal care, but then another baby under Letby's watch inexplicably crashed, and another. Patterns began to emerge. By June 2015, after a third baby died unexpectedly, consultants noticed the one common factor: Nurse Lucy Letby had been on shift every time. This was highly unusual. While premature infants are fragile, it was rare to see so many catastrophic collapses in such a short span, and always when the same person was present. There were also bizarre clinical signs. Some babies had odd blotchy discolorations on their skin and sudden swelling, suggesting air had somehow entered their bloodstream. Others had unexpected bleeding with no clear cause. These were red flags that pointed to something more sinister than random misfortune. The medical team began to notice that the unit seemed calm when Letby was off duty, only for emergencies to surge when she returned to work. Doctors started whispering their fears. Dr. Stephen Breary recalls telling a colleague in disbelief, "It can't be Lucy, not nice Lucy," when her name first came up. Another consultant, Dr. Ravi Jayaram, later testified that by late 2015, he had raised concerns to hospital management, warning that Letby's presence was linked to these unexpected and inexplicable collapses. In one incident, he walked in to find a baby's oxygen levels plummeting and Lucy standing by without acting. A breathing tube had been dislodged, yet she did nothing until he intervened. But hospital administrators were skeptical. To accuse a nurse of harming patients was serious, and Lucy's supervisors found it hard to believe that this polite, dedicated young woman could be deliberately hurting babies. At times, management even pushed back against the whistleblowers, treating the cluster of deaths as a tragic coincidence. Incredibly, at one point, senior doctors were reportedly told to apologize to Letby for questioning her. By mid-2016, the situation had become intolerable. In June, 2 baby boys from a set of triplets collapsed and died on back-to-back days under Letby's care. This double tragedy finally spurred the hospital to take action. Lucy Letby was quietly removed from frontline duties and reassigned to clerical work in July 2016. Still, there was resistance to involving the police. Hospital executives feared that calling in detectives would damage the hospital's reputation and cause panic. For months, the suspicious incidents were analyzed in-house while Letby sat in an office role, removed removed from babies, but not yet confronted about the deaths. Consultants later said that if hospital management had acted even a few months sooner, several babies might have been saved. Finally, in May 2017, the alarming findings of an external review could not be ignored. The data was stark. The only consistent link in all these cases was Lucy Letby. The hospital contacted Cheshire Constabulary, and a police investigation was launched. Detectives spent over a year piecing together the puzzle. What they found was chilling. Babies who had suddenly collapsed often had no natural medical explanation for their downturn, but many showed signs consistent with foul play. 2 infants had extremely high insulin levels in their blood, suggesting someone had poisoned them. Other babies had unusual air in their blood vessels or stomach, indicating air injections might have been used to cause fatal air embolisms. A pattern emerged of deliberate harm disguised as medical crises. On July 3, 2018, police arrested the 28-year-old nurse. A police body cam captured her standing at her front door in her pajamas, looking bewildered as officers led her away. Inside her home, investigators made startling discoveries. They found a collection of confidential hospital documents hidden in bags and boxes, including handover sheets with details of babies in her care. In total, 257 pages of sensitive neonatal unit paperwork were stashed in her room, 21 of which related to babies who had mysteriously died on her shifts. It was as if she had been hoarding souvenirs of her crimes. The most damning evidence was found scribbled on post-it notes and scraps of paper stuffed in a handbag and her diaries. In cramped handwriting, Letby had penned what looked eerily like confessions. One note bore the jarring words, "I killed them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them. I am evil. I did this." On another, she had written, "I don't deserve to live. I harmed them on purpose," and the words, "hate myself," in heavy ink circled over and over. Prosecutors would later call these writings a confession in plain sight. The trial unfolded over 10 long months in 2022-2023. Prosecutors described a cruel, calculated, and cynical campaign of murder. According to the evidence, Letby employed stealthy methods to attack the infants in her care. Sometimes she injected air bubbles into their bloodstream. Other times she overfed them with milk or fluid, causing catastrophic internal damage. In at least 2 cases, she poisoned babies with insulin, causing their blood sugar to crash to life-threatening levels. All of these actions could easily be masked as medical emergencies or complications of prematurity. One of the most heart-wrenching cases presented was that of twin boys, Baby E and Baby F. Baby E died in Letby's care. Baby F survived an insulin poisoning. In court, Baby E's mother recalled walking into the neonatal unit one night in August 2015 and hearing her son scream, a horrendous sound that should never come from a tiny baby. She saw blood around his mouth and panicked. Nurse Letby calmly told the mother that the bleeding was due to a feeding tube irritating his throat. The mother was told to leave and trust the staff, and she did reluctantly. Baby E bled to death internally that night, and experts concluded he had likely been injected with air that caused massive bleeding. Shockingly, after Baby E died, Letby comforted the grieving parents, even helping bathe the infant's body and dress him in a tiny gown, a seemingly compassionate gesture from the nurse who had caused the tragedy hours before. Doctors also testified about strange incidents on the unit. Dr. Ravi Jayaram recounted the night he found Letby alone with a baby whose breathing tube was mysteriously dislodged and oxygen levels plummeting, and how she didn't call for help. Another consultant described the growing alarm among the staff as each emergency was written off as bad luck until they couldn't ignore the pattern. When it was Lucy Letby's turn to defend herself, she took the witness stand. With tears in her eyes, Letby insisted she was innocent. She claimed the notes were not admissions of guilt, but an anguished outpouring written when she felt unfairly blamed. Her defense team painted her as a scapegoat, arguing that hospital incompetence and understaffing were the real culprits. Under cross-examination, however, prosecutors pressed hard. They highlighted inconsistencies in her accounts and the sheer improbability of so many accidents happening around one nurse. In August 2023, the verdict came. Lucy Letby was found guilty on 7 counts of murder and 7 counts of attempted murder. The jury believed beyond a reasonable doubt that she had deliberately harmed 13 babies in her care. The judge sentenced her to life in prison with no possibility of parole, a rare whole-life order reserved for the most heinous murderers. Lucy Letby is only the 4th woman in British history to receive a whole-life term. In delivering the sentence, Justice Goss told Letby that she had acted with a deep malevolence bordering on sadism in targeting defenseless babies. With Lucy Letby convicted, one colossal question remains: why? Letby herself never provided a clear motive, maintaining her innocence throughout. This void has led experts to speculate on several theories. One theory is that Letby fits the profile of an angel of death killer, medical professionals who secretly harm patients for psychological gratification. Some such offenders crave the excitement of medical emergencies agencies. They like to play God, bringing their victims to the brink of death and sometimes saving them. Investigators noted that after each incident, Letby appeared to relish the sympathy and attention she received. The prosecution suggested that on at least one occasion, Letby may have deliberately harmed a baby to attract the attention of a doctor she was infatuated with. Letby had exchanged flirtatious texts with a married doctor and seemed eager to impress him. When that doctor was away, a baby under Letby's care suddenly collapsed. Another possibility is a deep-seated psychological disorder. Some have speculated Letby might be a sociopath who derived pleasure from exerting power over helpless babies. The fact that she kept mementos and repeatedly returned to harm some infants multiple times suggests a level of obsession. One baby girl miraculously survived 3 separate attacks, only to be killed on Letby's 4th attempt. That persistence implies a terrifying determination. It's worth noting that to this day, Letby maintains she did nothing wrong. The closest we have to her own words are those anguished notes, where amidst the guilt-ridden lines, she asks, "Why me? And how has this happened?" almost if casting herself as the victim of a grand misunderstanding. The conviction of Lucy Letby has triggered a day of reckoning for the healthcare system. An independent inquiry was ordered by the British government to investigate how Letby's crimes went unchecked for so long. Initially announced as a non-statutory inquiry, it was later upgraded to a full statutory public inquiry amid public pressure to make sure everyone involved can be compelled to give evidence under oath. At the Countess of Chester Hospital, there has been intense soul-searching. Senior managers who had been in charge during 2015 to 2016 have faced heavy criticism. Some have resigned, others have formally apologized to the victims' families. In a 2024 inquiry hearing, former hospital bosses said they were truly sorry for the delay in involving police. It emerged that hospital leadership was more concerned with protecting the hospital's reputation than acting swiftly on the alarming concerns raised by doctors. For the families of the victims, the verdict brought some justice, but not peace. They gave gut-wrenching impact statements in court, speaking of the unbearable pain of losing their infants. One mother said she constantly imagines the life her baby would have had. First steps, first words, milestones stolen by Letby's actions. These families have been forever changed, and many have vowed to continue searching for answers. In hospitals across the UK, the Letby case has prompted reviews of safety protocols. One tangible change is the suggestion of improved electronic monitoring of staff presence and infant outcomes, using data to flag unusual patterns much earlier. Whistleblower policies are also under scrutiny. Nurses and doctors must feel empowered to speak up if they see something concerning. Another outcome of the case is a legal change in the UK regarding convicts attending sentencing. After Lucy Letby refused to face the court at her sentencing hearing, public outrage led the government to announce it will toughen the law so that serious offenders can be forced to attend their sentencing or face additional penalties. The case of Lucy Letby is one of the most shocking criminal cases in modern British history. It defies our assumptions about who a killer can be. After all, Letby was not a shadowy figure lurking in a dark alley. She was a trusted nurse in a bright hospital ward, someone we would instinctively trust with our life or the life of our child. That betrayal of trust is what makes this so chilling. Justice has been served. Lucy Letby will spend the rest of her life in prison, but the quest for understanding continues. This case has left us with a profound lesson. We must always pay attention to warning signs, regardless of how unlikely they may appear. Doctors and nurses on the front line saw something was wrong, and we've learned how crucial it is that their concerns are heard and acted upon swiftly. Hospitals are now reaffirming that patient safety comes before reputations or career considerations. How do you think such atrocities can be prevented in the future? What changes would you implement to detect and stop a potential killer in a hospital setting? This case, as painful as it is, can spur crucial conversations. By learning its lessons, we honor the little lives that were lost. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay curious, but stay safe.